like I say, I think it's world leading. The research areas that the lecturers work in, it's high, and like they demand high standards, which when you're working alongside doing your masters as well is probably quite tough at times. But I think it's great that they do demand those high standards because it's obviously paying off.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Talking Salford. This time we have taken our production outside of the studio as we experiment with a bit of home recording, pandemic style. Rest assured, we will still be bringing you a thoroughly entertaining interview with one of our esteemed alumni. And today we venture into the School of Health and Society with a guest who can offer a unique insight into one of the feel-good stories of this summer for English sports fans. So a warm welcome to Dr. Matt Cuthbert. Matt, how are you doing today?
Yeah, very well, thank you.
Now, as I said, Matt can deliver a unique perspective as he is a physical performance coach at the Football Association and works exclusively with the under-17 and under-19 England Lionesses setup. But how did he get there? So Matt has been with Salford for a long time. In fact, he's only just left after 9 years of studying. This began back in 2014 when Matt started his undergraduate in sports science, strength and conditioning, which he later followed up with a master's in strength and conditioning in 2018. Then for the last 5 years, he's been working towards his PhD in applied biomechanics, which he obtained just a few weeks ago at graduation. He's been working with the Football Association since September 2018 and has seen firsthand how the women's football game has grown in this country, with many of the Lionesses who lit up the Women's World Cup this summer having come in through the junior ranks that Matt works with. So, Matt, tell me about yourself, first of all. You've worked in sport for the whole of your career so far. Why the big interest? Was this something you'd always really wanted to do? Why do you think you ended up in football?
Yeah, so I've always had a big interest in sport, like ever since I was young, played it. Started off playing football, realised I wasn't very good at it and moved on. I played cricket, basketball, rugby. Rugby union was my big sport growing up. Always had a huge keen interest. Would follow it on TV as much as it would be on. So whatever was being broadcasted, I'd be watching it. It was a big love. I knew I wanted to be involved in it. Knew I wasn't good enough to be a competitive athlete. So the next best thing was being part of that support staff. Had various interests in sort of like science as well. And as I was growing up, so the natural step was that I'd maybe look at doing something like physio or something like that because they're the guys that you see running on the pitch. It's the very obvious backroom staff that support players. But after going to college and being supported within my rugby and my own sport with strength and conditioning, as soon as I was in that environment, sort of knew, right, this is what I want to pursue. This is something that I really enjoy doing. And then it went from there and escalated quite quickly.
So you played a lot of football when you were growing up as well. Did you ever think back then that you'd be training with a team like the Lionesses setup?
No, not at all. And to be fair, they're better footballers than I could have ever dreamed of being. So it's a pleasure to work with them.
Do you find it interesting being someone, and I was talking to someone recently about this, the idea that when it comes to sport, it's probably one of the only industries where you've got the people that are training and coaching the players are the people that wanted to be in the position of the people that they're coaching. It's quite interesting. You wouldn't get that set up in many other industries.
Yeah, it's like something we joke about, or I joke about a lot as a strength and conditioning coach, is that most of us are just failed athletes or in some cases they're successful athletes who have then found a different path. But for the majority of us, failed athletes in some respect or other.
So when it comes to looking at a degree, what was it about Salford that jumped out to you?
Yeah, so for strength and conditioning specifically, there was 3 or 4 good programs at the time when I was looking. 3 of them were specifically just strength and conditioning. The one at Salford is sports science, and then it has a strength and conditioning pathway within the third year. One of the best pieces of advice I got from one of the strength conditioning coaches at my college was like, keep your base wide, try and increase your base of knowledge as much as you can so that you can apply lots of different things within your practice. Because within strength and conditioning, like, we have to work across a multidisciplinary team. So you work with the technical coaches, you work with physios, doctors, nutritionists. There are occasions when we are the nutritionists because it's an area that is maybe slightly not undervalued, but under supported. So we don't necessarily all have a nutritionist with every team. At the England Pathway, we have one nutritionist that oversees all of our age groups. So we have to deliver some of the principles that they have provided to us. So yeah, having a good base of knowledge initially, I saw value in that and was, like I say, given some really good advice on that front. And then did a bit of research around what the courses looked like, who lectured on those courses, and the lecturers that we've got at Salford within sports science are world leading within their research. They're presenting at international conferences most years, and they've got quite big profiles. So that was also then a bit of a pull.
Was that quite clean? Was that quite a key factor then in terms of what Salford could offer you that some of the other universities that offer this degree couldn't?
Yeah, definitely. Because I think a lot of people get sort of not distracted, but they'll see the appeal with like brand new facilities and things like which are brilliant, but actually it's then the people who are delivering within those facilities. So when I first visited Salford, the strength and conditioning room there was 3 weightlifting platforms in a small room which had it was like a triangle, it was like a little wedge, so it was almost like hidden away in one of the buildings. I came and started in the September, and actually they'd opened it up and they'd like completely renovated it, which makes it a lot more appealing. But actually the thing that drove me there was the fact that the people I'd be working with know their stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess that's a lesson also in never judging a book by its cover. I guess when it comes to facilities with a university degree, it really does. It's the people that you're learning from ultimately, and you're still quite close to the people that you worked under and learned under at Salford.
Yeah, definitely. So I actually got a couple of weeks ago given an honorary research fellow role. So yeah, still keeping my hand in at Salford. But yeah, still have regular conversations with my supervisors from my PhD who also lectured on the undergrad and the masters. So yeah, built some really good relationships with them. And to be fair, a lot of the opportunities that I've had have come as a result of working closely with them.
No, that's fab. That's brilliant. So can you talk to me about how you found your undergrad at Salford? Any key highlights that jump out from that time?
Oh, I found Salford. That was good, to be fair. Like I think I've mentioned it to you previously around like our accommodation building is now where the new science and engineering building is. We were like the last group in there. It got knocked down in the year, like the following year. But actually, like, it's so close to being in Manchester. You've obviously got Media City around as well. Yeah. Like Manchester's almost like expanding. The city centre's like expanding out, and there's loads of work going on. So it looks very different to when I first arrived, but it's all heading in a very good direction.
Can you remember a lot of, I guess, the day-to-day doing your course as an undergrad? What was the kind of the key things that you had to do as part of your course?
So we had lectures most days. Quite a few were practical as well, which was good. Like, that's one of the appeals for me, was that it wasn't all lecture hall based. So a lot of the practicals would end up happening in Mary Seacole, one of the buildings, and the gym in there, or there's a human performance lab in there which has indoor running track and lots of bits of high tech equipment. So that was great because we just get hands-on stuck in there. My accommodation was on sort of the main campus, so it'd be short walk in the morning across the train tracks to Allerton or to Mary Seacole, and yeah, kept us busy. They like to throw in a Thursday morning lecture as well. Bearing in mind sports and stuff happen on a Wednesday, so that was always interesting. But yeah, it was good.
So, as a sports fanatic, then, and doing a sports degree, I imagine you did a bit of sport as well when you were here.
Yeah. I played for the rugby union side for the first 2 years. The second year, I separated my AC joint in my shoulder. So yeah, that put an end to that season. And then in third year, I started being a lot more involved in coaching and getting experience. So yeah, had to sort of hang my boots up temporarily so that I didn't get injured and didn't have that time away from coaching, because getting experience in our industry is huge.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. Absolutely. And if I'm not wrong here, you also worked as a bouncer in Manchester whilst you were a student as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I think the job title was door supervisor. But yeah, I worked on the doors in Manchester for a company. So the company that I worked for sponsored our rugby team at uni, sort of used that as a recruiting drive. So during sort of back end of first year and all the way through second year, supplemented my student loan with some door work most nights. So yeah, that was interesting and yeah, a good learning experience.
I mean, how did you manage, I guess, finishing work in the very early hours of the morning and then potentially having the lectures at 9 a.m. the next that later on that morning?
Yeah, it was not easy at times, and a lot of like afternoon naps to keep going. But yeah, I'd kind of work like Tuesday night, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so it didn't interfere too much. Unless it was around Christmas time when it got busy. So then a Thursday was added as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was quite intense at times. But yeah, I wouldn't change it.
So when did you know that you wanted to do a master's?
So sort of between second and third year, when I started to like look at what job opportunities there would be and what experience I'd need to get there, it sort of became clear that jobs in sport are extremely competitive. Mm-hmm. There's so many, not just strength and conditioning courses now, but just sports science generally. Most universities will have a course. Most universities will have a couple of hundred people or 100 or so people joining that course. So each year you're getting this crop of students graduating with the same qualification as you. Like, what's going to set you out? So actually working in a professional sport, you started to see that a master's became part of that process and that idea of specialism, because like I say, a lot of courses are just sports science.
Yeah.
So when you then start getting that extra level of strength and conditioning as a specialism, that's what started to sort of set you apart from everyone else, as well as then the experience alongside it. So like our master's course had a mixture of a wide range of ages. There were some people who had just come straight out of undergrad like myself. There were some people who had been working in sport because they built up experience and been working in there a long time, but felt they needed that extra level of specialism as well. So that was a good mix.
Absolutely. So talk to me a little bit about what that master's then was. What did it consist of? How did that compare to the undergrad then? I guess it's just all at a much higher level in terms of the academic side, but also in terms of the research.
Yeah, so it was a lot. So we almost progressed. We finished our third year having done a dissertation, which was a research project. So it was sort of bringing a next step and a next level into that. We ended up having to produce a literature review that would then build into your research proposal, which then built into another bigger research project, a bit like a dissertation. So it was a more condensed, higher level version of like that dissertation process in third year, alongside then having practical assessments, coaching assessments, so that you could demonstrate how competent you were in some of the more complicated processes when coaching. So that sort of lead up, because it's a year-long masters. You sort of have from September to December, mm-hmm. focusing on strength conditioning. Then you have sort of December to sort of that April, May time, where it would be injury prevention performance measurement, which would then lead into your research project. So it layers up really well and supports a similar theme throughout the process, whilst also then ticking off various like testing methods, which you probably use in practice. Like we use it a lot with some of our England girls, and as well as actually then just the practical coaching side of things.
Now, the postgraduate course in strength and conditioning has become a real breeding ground to some of the leading sports clubs in the northwest and Manchester area. We talked about this previously, but both Manchester football clubs have Salford alumni on their staff that did the master's course here. Were you aware of that when you were considering doing a master's?
Yeah. When I was considering doing the masters, because I'd been as an undergrad, I'd met a couple of them and a couple of people who. So there's also been quite a strong link with Sale Sharks previously, so Premiership rugby as well. They actually have funded a couple of masters places previously, based off in the third year of the undergrad, you have to do a placement module, and those who do the placement, if they sort of have the right work ethic and like show themselves in a very good light, Sale have previously then funded a master's place for them, which then gives them another year of experience of working with professional sports. So yeah, like very much being around it, I've always been quite aware of the trajectory that a lot of people have taken from both the undergrad and the masters, whether that's into PhD, into professional sport. So yeah, I think, and then these days there's a lot of any success that goes around from alumni, and there's obviously various Twitter posts and stuff around it. So there's lots of people involved in professional sport who have come through the ranks.
What do you think that says to you about the calibre of teaching that you got here at Salford?
Like I say, I think it's world leading. The research areas that the lecturers work in, like I said, they're presenting at international conferences like Keynote and everything. So yeah, it's high, and like they demand high standards, which when you're working alongside doing your masters as well is probably quite tough at times. But I think it's great that they do demand those high standards, because it's obviously paying off for a lot of the people who have come through.
Absolutely. Now, you had your first big coaching experience at Bury FC in its previous form. So that was back in 2018, and that was before you did your PhD. So that was your first real experience out there in a sports club in the area. How did that go for you?
Yeah, I think it was a big learning curve. So, like you see in sort of the news all the time, like managers get sacked, then therefore staffing changes. I was fortunate that one of my best mates at uni, who went down sort of the performance analysis route rather than strength conditioning, he already got the job at Bury, and then put my name forward. Once head coach had been sacked, the academy S&C coach moved up with the interim head coach. So there was a spot in the academy for me. And being in that environment, working with the technical coaches, like the footballing coaches, a lot closer than I ever have done before, because my previous experiences prior to that was working with sort of like rowing teams, BMXers, netballers, where actually they'd come to the gym, we'd do the work, and then they'd go off and travel to wherever to do their technical work and their skills-based training. Whereas this was very much embedded, like you can imagine. So yeah, being in day-to-day with those technical coaches, learning to communicate well with them to try and get their buy-in, because everyone's competing for time. And yeah, showing that you've got there's various opinions and philosophies from different technical coaches that may support what we do, but sometimes it conflicts. So yeah, learning to navigate that was a very steep learning curve, and yeah, definitely made a few mistakes looking back, but actually, like on reflection, it's helped me to then get to where I am, and their experiences that have been valuable. So
yeah, I mean, you must have been able to build up a rapport, a relationship with the players when you were there, but that's not as easy as it sounds, is it, when you're coming in? No.
no, no, especially midway through the season when they don't know who you are. So yeah, it's diving into the deep end. But like you see it all the time, I think you almost treading water a little bit, building those relationships until you then get a full preseason, like almost have a full cycle with the players and staff, which didn't end up occurring because then I went on to get the PhD, and actually the contract ended at the end of that season anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was definitely a steep learning curve.
Let's talk about your role with the Lionesses. Explain to me how that opportunity came about.
Yeah, so I was coming to the end of my masters. They'd approached Paul Comfort, who's one of our professors, and sort of leads the masters program. They'd met with him to say, we've got these questions that we want answering. Like, are we able to do it? So they went through it's now called an iPhD, so an industry funded PhD.
Okay.
That got set up and advertised through Salford. So yeah, I applied for that, and luckily, very fortunately, got the job. So yeah, it was fully funded through the FA were funding it through Salford. The questions were, or the overarching question around what they wanted answering was decided upon prior to my application. So I had to provide a research proposal for that as part of the application process, and then had an interview as well.
So talk to me about how the setup with the under-17 and under-19s works. Because, I mean, everyone's been hearing about the Lionesses all summer, but how does the youth team work?
Yeah, so our youth pathway runs from under-23s down to under-15s now. The only team we don't have within that is an under-18s, because most other nations don't have an under-18s group. There's 2 competition age groups, so under-17s, who I'm with, and under-19s both feature or both have the opportunity to qualify for European Championships every season. And then every other season, they have the European Championships, the Euros, is then used as a qualifier for the World Cup at those age groups. So it happens every 2 years and alternates between 17s and 19s. So this coming season is our 17s World Cup year. Therefore, next year will be the under-19s opportunity to qualify. So yeah, the pathway starts off at under-15s. Then they have a 2-year build-up to that under-17 cycle, where we have a round 1 qualifier around October, November time. So we're going to Hungary this year. Then we have round 2 qualifiers. So top 3 out of 4 teams go through to round 2. Round 2, you have 4 teams again, so it's a 3-game tournament, and it's only then the top team out of that group that qualifies for the finals. And the finals happens in May, which this year's in Sweden, which is exciting.
Very nice. So how does your job work with the team then? What do you do?
So day to day on camp, I'm there we start off the day, players will come in after waking up and go through sort of a wellness process. We'll check how they are from either the training previously or the games that we've played. So that'll be like me and the medical team, so physio and doctor, assess how the players are. We then have technical planning meetings where, once we've worked out where the players are at, how that fits into what we planned into a session, make any modifications that we need to. But then I'll sit in with the technical staff to plan or to finalise the training sessions that we end up doing that day. Or if we've got games, we'll be getting ready for that. Then we usually go straight into training at that point. So prior to training, we go through an individual preparation slot where we work with individuals to make sure they're then ready to go into team preparation, which is sort of a little bit of, it's like a small dose of gym work, rather than us having like 1 or 2. And this is where my PhD came from. Rather than us having 1 or 2 big gym sessions like you might do at club or you might do just generally at home, we split those up and divide those up into like prior to on pitch training every day. So they still do the same amount, but it's then just reduced into smaller doses. So we have that. Then we get out onto the pitch, have our pitch sessions. Once the pitch session's finished, and within that, I'll be like recording their GPS. I've got timings for general drills, almost a bit like a drill sergeant, but I'll be calling that out. Then post-training nutrition, we'll get them in, we'll get them fed, and then we'll have various recovery strategies that we end up using with them, like stretching, foam rolling, ice baths if it's appropriate, some heat strategies, and then but like the two big things that we go after are like sleep and nutrition, particularly with the younger lot. So yeah, that's sort of day to day. We have camps that will last 10 to 12 days on average. Sometimes we have short ones if they're just training camps, where we've maybe only got 1 or 2 fixtures. Tournaments have 3, unless we go to the finals where it's 4 or 5. So yeah, that's day to day on camp. In between that, we do a lot of planning for those camps, logistical and then just departmental.
I've got you.
And then we try and develop being a full-time. So because we've got 5 or so teams within the pathway, but only 2 full-time members of staff, we then have consultants come in with some of the other age groups. So a lot of the time then off camp is helping either create resources that then further our delivery and provide consultants with what they need to deliver, or just setting them up and getting them through the planning process as well.
So what have you learned? What has been the big learnings for you from working with the setup?
One of the big things is sort of the strategic development side of things. I think a lot of the stuff that you learn within your degree or various degrees is around delivery. So it's like either collecting data, learning to analyze that data, like coaching, but actually, especially within the international setup where we've got a bit of time in between camps, like I think it's more difficult at clubs where they're just going week to week and have to perform every week. But certainly within our international setup, the exposure I've had to more strategic thinking and development is something I'd never had exposure to before. So like, yeah, working out what our priorities are, how that fits with the purpose globally as an organisation as well as in our departments, and then building up projects and tactics to develop our ways of working so that we can try and achieve that common goal, which the ultimate goal is winning major tournaments, which we were fortunate enough to do last season. Just missed out this year, but with that, it's also within the youth pathway as well, that we're going after those those experience. If we get to finals, then those experiences sort of will help them on their journey to develop.
How do you think this summer has gone from an employee within the organisation? Has it been everyone being on tenterhooks? Has it been united front? How is it when you've got the seniors going that deep in a World Cup?
Yeah, to be fair, I think there's something, and you'll hear them say it all the time, there's something different about sort of this group of staff and players. So since Sabrina came in, like there was just a big change. It happened very rapidly, but like they've sort of managed it really well, and you sort of have no worries really that like they're ever going to lose. It sounds daft, but the players are like, they're so calm and confident that actually even within the final, and we were 1-0 down to Spain, there was still a part of me that was like, no, we're going to bring this back. Like we've done it before. Quarter-final of the Euros, we were losing to them. We sent Millie Bright up top and managed to snatch an equaliser to then take it to extra time. So there's sort of a never say die attitude.
Absolutely.
That, ends up running through. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm still a nervous wreck watching it, but there is still like a confidence of, no, do you know what? They've got this. And that's like, yeah, down to both Sabrina and all of the support staff around them so that they've got that confidence as well. And the girls are unbelievable. So, yeah, it's definitely a good environment to be working in.
I mean, look, Georgia Stanway, Ella Toon, Lauren Hemp, Chloe Kelly, these are all stars from this year's final making team, and they all came through the youth setup. So what
Yeah,
impact do you think they are now having now on the game, with the game in this country? It's clearly in a period of unprecedented growth and change.
yeah, it's unbelievable. Like those individuals that you've mentioned were all part of the last Youth World Cup that we attended.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2018, I'd started just after they'd been, but they were part of the under-20s World Cup. So if you qualify for the World Cup within your under-19s Euros year, you then have a whole season to prepare for that World Cup.
Okay.
Whereas under-17s, we only have a couple of months. So yeah, they were part of it was in France the same year that the men's went to Russia and got to the semi-final. The girls got to the semi-final as well.
Mm-hmm.
They ended up losing that and came third, so got a bronze medal. But the fact that that whole group have had those experiences at youth level actually then has held them in good stead for being part of major tournaments at seniors as well. So it shows the process is like works.
Mm-hmm.
We've just got to make sure that our youth players have that opportunity now. So it's putting them in the best place to qualify for those events so that they get to experience them. But yeah, the impact those players have, and they all do it in their own ways as well, which is great. Like I see Hempo playing with like building Lego and like doing things very quietly in her direction, whereas then you've got your Chloe Kelly who is just very confident and like that's who she is. So it is great to see all their personalities coming out and them just being themselves.
Absolutely. I mean, with both the men and the women in the England setup, they're both going quite far in tournaments at the minute. Do you think combined this is a golden generation of England athletes?
I don't know necessarily whether it's golden generation or whether it's just like the new norm.
The new norm.
Like having seen the players come through the pathway, sort of things that we're trying to instill and trying to like the systems we're trying to build to support, because the overarching purpose and the aim of the organisation is to win major tournaments and then sustain winning.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'd like to think it's going to be the new norm, and we're going to be for the next few cycles going to be pushing that needle consistently.
So you're envisioning a lot more success for this group going forwards?
Yeah, I think so. I think the confidence they've got, some of the players we've got coming through the pathway, I think, and the leadership they've got as well. I mean, that all might change if, say, Sabrina leaves or if Gareth ends up leaving, and then some new ideas and new changes come in. But that also might accelerate it the same way that, like, Serena coming in has accelerated it. Yeah. So, yeah, for now, I'd confidently say that, although we might not win major championships every time, we'll certainly be pushing that longer end of the tournament.
It's great to have your confidence there. There's been a lot of talk this year, particularly the women's game, around the sheer number of ACL injuries. The British Orthopaedic Association state that female athletes have between 3 to 6 times higher risk of these injuries than males do. As a coach in the Lionesses setup, how do you support athletes and prevent these injuries from affecting the younger groups and harming their potential careers?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of talk about it in the media generally. It's something that's very prevalent, particularly in women's sports, but actually just sports in general. There's a high prevalence. I'm a big, you could probably see here, I'm a big NFL fan. Like, there's always an ACL count that comes up on Twitter every season. And, well, not even that, within pre-season, and they get into 30s or 40s before the season's even started. So just generally with competitive team sports where you've got multi-directional elements to it, there's going to be some level of ACL injury. Unfortunately, it is quite high in the women's game. It's very multifactorial. So there's lots of different reasons that it could happen, if not a combination of lots of different reasons. So yeah, there's lots of things that we're exploring that we do to support. I'm also trying to encourage, so we don't get a lot of time with the players, so it's also then helping the clubs develop them as athletes too, in terms of long-term change. There was actually quite a lot of, or some research done at Salford into sort of some ACL research around direction as an action and some of the key risk factors that may then contribute to ACL injuries. And a lot of it was like very physical related, but that's definitely just one corner of it. There's obviously talk around some of the menstrual cycle and boots and like the surfaces that they're playing on. From my world, I think because of the rise in professionalism so rapidly, players are maybe not as prepared for the physical demands as they potentially could be. And that's potentially just a bit of a lag time and will sort itself out to a certain extent, because like the pro game academies that have come in this season, like previously we had WSL academies and regional talent clubs, they've all changed to pro game academies now. The investment in their time, the number of training days they've got, hopefully they're doing a lot more gym work as well, because I think strength is a big contributor, or lack of is potentially a big contributing factor. So there is a lot of work being done. There is a lot of, there's been media talk about there needs to be more research. I mean, generally there needs to be more research in female athletes, or females in generally, I imagine, in other areas. But yeah, in female athletes, there is a lack of research generally. But actually, like there has been quite a lot of stuff done in ACLs that I think has potentially been missed. So like there's still a lot more to be done. But yeah, we just need to I don't think we'll ever find a solution for it, but certainly trying to lower the risk factor as much as we can is definitely is the way that we need to go. So yeah, it's coming, I think. As to how quickly that develops, like yeah, we're still getting ACL, like a couple of players in the pathway with England in the last week or so have got another couple of ACL injuries. So it's heartbreaking for them.
Yeah. But how do you deal with the mental health side of that then? How do you support them?
So we stay as connected with them as we can do. Obviously, when they're not with us, they're sort of club's responsibility. But yeah, we try and keep them connected within, especially because we see like they're part of the England setup, that we see them as high potential players. So we try and we'll support the clubs as much as we can. We'll stay in contact and stay in touch with them as people, let alone as football players, to make sure that they're being supported in every way they can. I think the positive thing now is that because of the support that they get, then actually we are seeing them return to football and return to a high quality of football reasonably quickly. I mean, like the maturity process of that is about 9 months, depending on the individual. So it is quite a bit of time out, but we then see them being reintegrated back into the England setup and they get back up to where they are. So I don't think it's necessarily as, as tough a process in the fact that if they didn't have that support and they were just having to find their own way through it, like maybe they have done previously, there'd probably be worries that they wouldn't get back up to where they were previously. But yeah, with the support that they get now, it isn't the end of the journey for them.
That's great to hear. Like, you're a self-confessed lover of all sports. I think we discussed that, and you follow a great deal of them. So doing your qualifications and your experience today, it opens up a lot of doors to many other sports besides football. So what other roles have you thought you might want to explore further down the line?
Yeah, so to be fair, I'm a big NFL fan. Yeah. I think working over in America would be like very interesting because I think the way that the sports system is set up over there, we've obviously got an academy system for quite a few sports in this country. If not, then it's still a very centralized, way of nurturing talent, whereas they very much got their high school collegiate into professional sports and that route. So it'd be an interesting one to explore and some new challenges within that. As to what sport ends up being, like I said, I'm a lover of most sports. So I don't think that would necessarily be like a sway one way or the other. And the bit that's like, or a lot of the stuff interesting me now, whereas, well, I've always loved working with like data and numbers and asking questions and trying to find answers and like solve problems. So actually the way sort of data analytics is going and the influence that has within sport is like very much an interest as well. I'm quite envious of some of like the younger individuals who come up just like having had some like coding experience or computer science experience, maybe schools that like we haven't had that previously. So yeah, trying to self-teach like coding and things like that, it's a long, arduous process for me.
You've been a student for a long time. I think you can maybe give yourself a little bit of a break from it.
But yeah, that whole like data analytics side is growing massively, and but I don't think that like that can't take away from the practical aspects of it as well. Like it's all very well knowing, right, these are the questions that we're being asked of the data, let's find the answers, but then it's how that's applied. And that's where I think the balance of the two, like you almost become a bit of a unicorn around, like there's not many people who can do that. They're either one side of the spectrum or the other. So yeah, trying to find that middle ground of knowing how to interrogate the data properly, and then not just how to apply it, but how to then present it and get buy-in from other coaching staff and other members of the multidisciplinary team is an art. So it's certainly something that interests me quite a lot.
No, that's cool. That's really cool. Now, I mean, you've drawn my attention to it. So behind you obviously got Seattle Seahawks logo, but there is also an England T-shirt with Cuthbert 23 on the back. So is that from the team?
Yeah, so that was from with the under-17s, we went to the Euros finals in Estonia this summer. So yeah, there's a little team photo in there as well, and they all signed our shirts, which was very kind.
Nice touch.
Yeah, there'll definitely be a couple of future Lionesses within that group.
Well, there we go.
So yeah, I like to hang my hat on one or two, but like, what do I know?
So
we'll wait and see on that one.
Yeah, let's do some hot takes. So these are quick fire questions to kind of round things off then. So first one, what sporting event is unmissable and why should people watch it?
What sporting event? A World Cup. Is that one event? World Cup final.
World Cup final. Lionesses World Cup final. So the weekend just gone then, yeah?
Yeah, for sure. I know you said quick fire, but actually one of our like members of staff on the Thursday before the game kicked off on Sunday flew out to Sydney and then came back on the Monday. So the amount of travel involved in that just shows how unmissable it is.
Absolutely. No, that's a great answer there. So who do you foresee as the future Lionesses captain?
Oh, that's a very good question.
Putting you on the spot here.
Yeah, on the spot there. I'd potentially say Chloe Kelly.
Any reason why?
Well, I think there's a lot of leaders in that group generally, but I think just with like the confidence in her play and how I imagine she is around the group, yeah. But I think there's like probably 3 or 4 that could be answered.
It's a hard question, as you say. There are loads of leaders in that group, and so I think it'll be really interesting to see how the captaincy develops over the years. So last one then. Again, this is on the Lionesses, so I'm going to really put you on the spot here. What's your prediction for when they're going to win their next trophy? Name a year.
Olympics next year. Although that's not technically Lionesses, it'll be like Team Juniors.
Yeah, so come on then. European or a World Cup?
In terms of Lionesses, I think we'll do, I mean, it's not done very often, but the next Euros, with Serena still there, with some of the players coming through, there's not too many players who'll end up leaving that group. Mm-hmm. So yeah, defending that.
There we go. You're on the record about it.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
No, you're going to be held to that by, absolutely. Matt, thank you so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you for sharing your experience and coming with us on the pod today.
No problem. Thank you very much.
And so that brings an end to today's episode. I hope you found today fascinating and you'll subscribe for more episodes where we bring you more interesting stories from our Salford University alumni. But until then, we'll see you next time.